I'm excited now to introduce you to Mr. Mike Oakes, Senior Pre-Sales Engineer at Atempo. Mike, are you there?
Yes, sir, I am. How are you doing today?
Doing great, Mike. It's great to have you on. Take it away.
All right. Well, thank you, and David, thanks for the actual tech team for inviting us to participate today. Also, real quickly, big thanks for joining. Hope you're staying safe with everything that's going on with COVID. As mentioned, my name is Mike Oakes. I'm a Senior Solutions Architect with Atempo, and I've been in the compute storage industry about 35 years. What I like to do, and I know we've got a lot of information, short amount of time, a brief introduction about Atempo, and then followed by a closer look at our data protection and preservation products. So, real quickly, who is Atempo? So we've been in the business about 27 years now. We bring to bear, experience in the field of data protection, preservation, management. As you can see by the slide, 2,000 plus customers worldwide, well north of 200 employees. And we enable organizations to preserve and manage their data ecosystems, regardless of that data set size, that data set's location, organization size. And data is usually the lifeblood of any organization, so being able to recover it when and where needed is crucial. And more importantly, keeping your data live today and working for you, it's become mandatory in today's 7x24 environment. So our solutions are designed to protect, store, facilitate movement, and provide easily searchable functionality for quick retrieval of assets when needed. Now, these solution sets that I'm talking about from us, they're software-based. So we sell all software. You can reuse your own hardware. We have sizing guides that talk about, what sizing you need for, a server, and you can reuse your servers, you can reuse your hardware. So there's no need for forklift upgrading. You can even use VMs, but I'll just bring up a note about VMs for archiving or things off to tape libraries. It's not supported, not only just from us, but if you look at some of VMware's notes and others, going through an iSCSI to a tape drive doesn't work. It's not reliable, so it's just not supported connected to we call a data mover. And I'm going to talk more about those when we get into the architecture a little bit. So that being said, you're probably thinking, why did I preface about Atempo here with about this slide? And what I wanted to do was give you a little bit of Atempo, and then, what we saw coming as some of the crucial elements today to address in the market space, not just government education, research, and some of the other fields that we address. So I'm actually going to jump to bullet number 2 first here, ever-increasing data sets. And this is, unstructured data is just growing exponentially. So how do you manage it? More importantly, when you're managing, where is it located, right? And it's usually some type of homogeneous data silo. 2 universities may be collaborating, or 2 facilities, and one may have GPFS, one may have Lustre, another one may have some type of NAS. How do you take those homogeneous data silos, turn into a heterogeneous or seamless architecture to help you manage that data set? That's important. That's something we had to put in the product, and we wanted to put in the product. And then, how do those sites collaborate? How do they share data? But how do they do so, not just seamlessly, but protected, meeting regulatory requirements, security, cyber security, right? Encryption, all of those things needed to be done to protect the data and ensure when you need an asset, it's there. So that's something we had to have in the product. And air gap protection, going to tape. Tape for a while was going away, but some of the viruses and other things that have hit, air gap protection's back. How do I protect my data both on-prem and then move something off-prem or to a different location, or just maybe it's on-prem, but like I said, air gap, tape drive, put in a vault, whatever it happens to be. One thing that isn't mentioned here in this slide, and I wanted to bring it up, is the ever-shrinking backup window. How do I get my data protected that much quicker, right? There's that window of vulnerability. How do you reduce it? That's something we definitely want to have in the product. So that being said, what is Mirror per se? So it's a file-based management tool. We're file-based, and we're basically software. Like I said, you can use your own hardware, reuse your infrastructure. What you see here at the 12 o'clock and the 6 o'clock position, Mirror for backup, Mirror for archiving. These are the tried and true, battle-tested, almost 30 years now in the market. They've evolved over time. They brought in new feature sets, new storages, and so forth. But they're core of the engine. They're these pillars. So the other 2 that you see, the one at the 9 o'clock position, we call it Mirror for data moving. Think of this as synchronization, replication, copy, sync, and move, automated task movement, even manual task movement by a user, should you so assign users the permission to do it. That was important to have for collaboration purposes. keeping things in sync in distant locations. These three that I'm talking about here, think of them as a perpetual product, right? You buy the software, a license, and then you go on and you have support year after year and so forth. The one at the 3 o'clock position here, Miracle Migration. This one was a needed facet to have, needed tool, so to speak, in the tool bag, because with newer storages coming down the pike, that explosion of data, that data tsunami as we call it, you had to be able to, one, collapse storage infrastructures or come off old, antiquated storage. I want to get on something bigger, faster, smarter. Faster being AI, right? Take advantage of the analytics in the storages. How do you get there seamlessly? How do you do it live in a production environment where your source that you're coming off of stays live for users? You can transfer data to the new storage and bring it live when ready, or basically actually migrate while running on the new storage. That's a feature you can also do within the tool. Think of this one as a time-based type of thing. So you purchase or you rent the software, so to speak, for X amount of months. X amount of capacity needs to be migrated. And we do it as a professional service in some time. And once it's done, you can shut it down. Basically, the software license expires, and you're running on your production storage. So real quickly then, what's that architecture I'm talking about? As I said, we're all software. So what you see here at the middle left here, you'll see something labeled Myria and another one grayed out underneath it. These are Myria servers. They hold the database. You can have a second copy, and it shows two talking to the same system here. True HA environment, you'd have two independent, basically PostgreSQL databases that we run. We'll keep those in sync over secured interconnect. So encrypted, right? That's important, especially in today's world. Nothing goes over the wire, so to speak. If we're talking to our servers, it's basically clear text. So we can encrypt in flight. You can have, I said, two servers. These are effectively, think of it as a traffic cop. Their responsibility is to manage the cluster the software cluster we're talking to. They are basically all communications, CLI, web UI, all user interfacing, all management done through the server. No user talks directly to a data mover. We call it an agent. Now this could be on your hardware. It's just some software we overlay, Red Hat, Windows, Linux, you name it. We're open compliant on most softwares. We have our own matrix that you can get from a compatibility guide. These data movers, their name tells you everything they do. They're responsible for moving data from point A to point B or from primary to secondary. Now, within these data movers, you can actually think about pooling these data movers. Now, pooling, why am I talking about pooling for a second? Because I can actually pool data movers together, and I can move data between A and B, primary, secondary. I could have basically segregated data movers for high security data that all they do is they transmit between 2 points, and they're completely segregated. What this gives you, though, is the advantage to do some things to reduce that window of vulnerability I mentioned earlier. We have some tools under the hood that we call FastScan, and parallelization we do with it. So in conjunction with the software coming from the Myria server who's in control, it can start to divvy up job workflows. What I mean by that is I can have a job and say, maybe I want to run, in this case we have 3 data. I'm going to do 6 sub-jobs with a particular task that's going to run. And I can set some threshold and say, after so much time, or so much data has been scanned that needs to be acted upon, or so many files have been scanned, fire up a sub-job that meets that requirement and put it on one of the data movers. Now, I'm moving data. I'm looking for data at the same time. I'll continue to scan for more data. And if I find something that meets that threshold again, I'll put it on the next data mover. And I'll keep doing that. Now, if I had 6 sub-jobs, I'd put basically 2 on each data mover. So I'm getting load balancing with this pooling. I'm getting basically the ability to keep everything in parallel and check, so to speak, while I'm running. Now, there's also cores on each one of these. We also have the ability to parallelize and multi-thread, sorry about that. So we could turn cores into copy engines. Those engines, so to speak, will move data. So now I'm parallelizing, I'm multi-threading, all at the same time. And so I'm getting my data protected that much quicker. But there's one more tool left in the bag here, something called FastScan and snapshotting. What we can do, if it's a file system and or an appliance, we can talk to the API, GPFS. Luster, but we don't do it. I'll talk about Luster in a second. We don't do a snapshot on Luster. Or some type of NAS, Isilon, NetApp, Cumulo. There's a couple of others as well. We can use the native onboard functionality of that appliance, do a snapshot. We'll validate that on the first walk and see. Doesn't matter if it's archive, backup, copy, sync, and move, replication. The next time around we go to run an incremental, we'll say to catch up, or to do some other job function, we'll take another snapshot. We'll compare the two. We'll ask for a differential change list. We'll take that, we'll import it to the server. And now instead of walking the file system, we're using the snapshot and the change list. And now we're divvying that up and sending it out to data movers. So things that could take hours to walk a multi-petabyte file system can take seconds with a snapshot. Now I've divvied it up with fast scan. I've moved it out. I've parallelized all that movement. My vulnerability window has shrunk. My impact to user experience is literally none because I'm not walking a file system anymore. And these tools can be used for cloud, tape, disk. You get to choose the basically the appliance you want to talk to. We call them storage manager containers. And the reason why I'm bringing up a storage manager container is I may want to have multiple copies in multiple locations of the same piece of data, maybe locally, across country, across the world. I can store it on disk. I can store it on tape. You have in the notion of storage manager containers an extra level of protection, so to speak. There's an extra hash that you can assign to each, and they can be independent. The reason why I bring this up is I can have a hash for a copy on tape, a different hash for the one on the cloud or private storage, different hash for one on a disk storage. Should any one of them not match and we go to do a recall, we will automatically call from the other one. It's an independent hash. We know which one goes with which. We'll flag it as an issue. We'll notify the administrators we need to take an action to fix this particular file in this particular location. Well, we've already retrieved the data that's correct and given it to the user or the program that's needed it. So we don't impact the front end. We do things on the back end to ensure you're safe and secure. So real quickly, getting into more about this architecture, and this is more like, think of this as more of a use case, sorry. 3 locations. Could be LA, New York, and London. Site 1, Site 2, Site 3. You notice 2 Myriad servers. Full redundancy. We'll keep things encrypted over the wire for the database. Database is protected with SHA encryption. So should one go down, one site go down, a network connection go down, I still have full resiliency. I'm still running. If you notice, there's multiple data movers, 2 at each site in this example. Maybe I want to do a backup. We'll use this as an example. From site 1 to site 2, I want to use basically maybe the object storage in site 2, but I want to put a copy of my tape on site 1. I can do that. The important thing here is with those storage manager containers, I get my hashes, but with data movers at every location, you can say, you know what, when we set this up, I want all data to go encrypted from these data movers. So what we'll do is we'll pick up the data for transfer on site 1, we'll encrypt it on that read, we'll send it across the wire to the other data mover, encrypted. You can give us the key, we can use SSL, TLS, we'll decrypt it on the other side, apply it to that storage appliance that we want to talk to. Quick, efficient, and protected. That's the name of the game here. Coupled with that, I also can, if I wanted to, I could use any location as a backup for the other. And there's another tool that we have under the hood that we call Snap Store. You can literally have, maybe I'll use a GPFS IBM Spectrum scale as an example. You can have an IBM Spectrum scale that we're backing up, and you can do it in a mode we call one-to-one. And what this allows you to do is you could back it up to a NAS, or you could back it up to another slower, smaller GPFS or some other type of cluster that we can talk to the API to. And it will make it look, even though it's a backup, just like the source. Should that source fail, you can repoint your users to that target, that backup, and run on it immediately. Then you can reconstitute that source for whatever reason it went offline, maybe it was a network issue, something happened. When it comes back online, we'll just replicate the data back on a synchronization task, and you can move your users back to production, and your backup is now running as your backup again. Right? So nearly online movement of users, data, and so forth. Really good for those production environments. So what does all that entail? How do you manage it and so forth? So if some of you remember earlier on Atempo, ADA, Atempo Digital Archive, we had a lot of administration user, but they were thick-thin client. We've switched that now to using HTTP, HTTPS. So you can do a secured connection, web browser. You'll see here on the screen, I hope it's not too small, this one I've logged in as root. Now, if you have users and you set them up to have access, they're only going to get to see and access those things you've given them access to within the product line. This one here, you'll see something called Easy Move, Migration, and Repository. Think of repositories as your archive and backup locations. Those are just happen to be the locations where I'm going to put some type of data. In here, we're going to use Video Archive for an example here. If you notice, right next to the Video Archive, you'll see something in blue. It looks like a file folder. That is, think of as a repository. That's a repository location of data. The representation you're seeing is out of our database. So you see in a file system a view that you can both search for metadata and also search on criteria. So user, group, UID, everything you can think of for metadata, you can search on in there. Now, you can, in this case, I want to just move, I'm recovering a file. I want to take my data here out of the video, and I want to move it into what you see on the right-hand window there in the bottom is you'll see a highlighted blue disk. That's a storage target. Right? So I can pull it back. I get to choose where it goes. You can do this as an administrator, or you can give users, and you can get very granular on how you give users access to what they can move, what they can do, what they can't do. We do integrate with AD and LDAP. We do not give carte blanche access to the data. We expect the administrator or administrators to go in and say, I have this user, I have this group, and they're allowed to do X, Y, and Z. But we do not, because it's your data, that's your lifeblood, it needs to be protected. Don't just give open access because someone has LDAP access. Now, all you do here is basically you can click add. I can do multiple moves here, or retrievals, and just tell it to validate, the little green button at the bottom. What can happen in some instances, you have basically multiple instances of versions of a file, and we store them. If it's a change, we're going to store it. Now, you can see here, it can have multiple instances. It tells you modification time, creation time, storage time, if there was a hash, what type, and what it was when it went with it. You can go and start to drill in. Think of it as basically time navigation. Which file do I want, and where do I recall it to? You get that granularity all the way through in the database. You can also, one other thing, we'll store metadata. You can tell us metadata to store. You can create your own dictionaries, and you can actually tag after the fact. So you can go into the repository here, click on a file, add metadata to it, and go ahead and have it stored in our database. So that being said, because I know there was a lot of time, I'm going really, really fast here. So I've shown you a little bit about the product. You're probably asking yourself, maybe, hopefully, how do I get my hands on it? How do I deep dive? How do I POC? What is it all about? So you can, of course, contact us. There's also a great way to go through some of our elite partners. One of them here, and a quick word about them, is we're pretty selective on who we partner with. We don't just pick anybody. And just like you, when you're looking for a partner, someone who's knowledgeable, right, in that field, understands your environment, the workflows, applications, and we're the same way. So I wanted to mention these guys. They've been a great partner of ours, elite partner, Applied Data Systems. These guys are truly, my opinion, top of the game, right? They're experts in HPC, machine learning, AI, single node, multi-node clusters, right? Their breadth of knowledge is second to none in the industry. So if you've got a workflow need or a system design or redesign, please reach out to them. They're a great organization to partner with. So kind of wrap it up here. I know I went pretty fast. Why Atempo, right? And so managing complex data sets, we talked about at the beginning, right? Homogeneous data silos, distant locations, collaboration and sharing. How do I do that seamlessly? Don't impact that user workflow. Reduce or eliminate that window of vulnerability for data during a backup or an archive. Right? We enable that feature set. More importantly, it's cost effective. And what do I mean by that? Because it's a single software appliance, but you can do archive, backup, that copy, sync, and move. Offload the admin IT staff, have users archive and back up their own data. Right? Recall it when needed. Specific locations, all within the same tool set. You don't have to buy separate tools. And of course, we hear here 24/7 sun never set support. So what do we mean by that? So we have facilities for support in EMEA, the United States, and Asia. So wherever you happen to be, we'll have somebody on standby or on, basically on call on the phone and monitoring a queue. Best way too to get a hold of us is email a lot of times to pick up that call. So when you need help, something actually goes awry, whether it's accident, nefarious, whatever it happens to be, you have a team behind you there to back you up. It's your data, right? So our mantra here is it's any data, but it's your data. So it's any data, anywhere, anytime. That's the mantra of the product. That's the mantra of our support. When you need us, we will be there. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to the team. Thanks, everyone.
Great presentation, Mike. As always, really cool product here from Atempo. I know this could help a lot of companies out there, a lot of IT organizations. We do have some questions for you from the audience, and while we do that, we've got 2 polls. I'm going to bring up the first poll now. I want to call everyone's attention to the question on the screen is, what is the volume of your petascale data set? So we'll leave that up there. What is the volume of your data set? And take the first question here. Let's see. Daniel is asking, when it comes to protecting his data, he said that they're really challenged by their backup window. He doesn't even have time to get his incrementals done, much less a full backup done in his backup window. Do you have any tips for him? Could this solution help him?
Sure. So that fast scan and parallelization one will really help. But a lot of times too, breaking it up a little bit more, and that goes to the parallelization I talked about with data movers, making subtasks for the backup instead of doing full level file system. We may be already doing this, David. Break it down to the lower levels. Just get those things that need to be changed and moved off. Can greatly help reduce that backup window.
Excellent. Excellent. Good tip. Let's see. Another question they're asking about, let's see, automated data classification for time savings that you mentioned. They're asking, how can it effectively learn and scan the data? Do you want to share a little bit more details on that, how that works?
So when you say learn and scan the data, I'm assuming they're talking about something on a metadata perspective and so forth. So what we do when we actually scan the data and move it for an archive or some type of action, we collect it all and put it in our database. Now, what you can do is, from the perspective of learning the data, you get the ability to search it. I'm going to give you a little bit of we'll call it a heads up of what's about to drop in the next 6 to 8 months. There's going to be a tool that you'll get with Miriam. I'm calling it a tool. It's really another appliance that integrates directly with it. It's going to be our version of analytics that allows you to learn about all the data, even stuff we haven't talked to yet. And you can reach into that. You can pull information. You can pull metadata, user, timestamps. There's a multitude of things you can search on to create your own dashboards to learn more about data that is even outside your workflow, then tag it, and we'll act upon it later.
Very cool. Very cool. I like that. Let's see. There's another question they're asking. Can I really use the same platform to manage all Mira features, backup, archive, and more?
Absolutely. That was the whole design. We wanted to give you a robust platform, but simplify the management. So you may only need backup today and not need archiving for 2 years. Drop it in when you need it. Same product, same platform, just license it.
Nice. That doesn't happen enough in the world of IT.
No.
So yeah, that's cool to hear. Let's see. Let's go ahead and move on now to our next question. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to respond to that poll, because I'm bringing up the next poll question. Simple question here. What additional information would you like about the solution from Atempo? And I'll leave that up while we do the remainder of our questions in the queue. What about migration? There's a question here. Can this help me to migrate user shares from one NAS to another and keep access rights fully intact after the migration?
Absolutely. So from a migration standpoint, now depending on the type of share you're talking about, whether it's an export or a share, so NFS, CIFS, we'll migrate that data or data movers with the same protocol access. So if you're doing things on your share that's SMB, will migrate on Windows. Why? To do exactly what you just asked. Preserve the file system semantics, all the ACLs, all the permissions. Same thing we use NFS on Linux to preserve the POSIX. You can migrate those over a little bit short amount of time, or maybe it's a longer window. You get to choose, and we do that basically in multiple modes. Echo and contribute are the two big ones for synchronization. Echo is mirror, source, and target. But if you want to actually work on the target, you put it in contribute mode. The difference there is Echo, think of it as a RAID 1 mirror, is making source just look exactly like target, including all deletes. Contribute is do everything but the deletes. So you can actually have a workflow that does both.
Excellent. Excellent. Let's see, a lot of good questions. Next question that I see here, does Atempo Mira provide an option for disaster recovery?
Yes. So that from a perspective of, I talked about SnapStore, that's one way to do it. So you can actually have, basically think of it as a live backup running as your DR site. So should you fail, should something fail to your production, point your users to the other side or the other site, and continue running while you reconstitute that first production site.
Excellent. And then there's a couple of questions here around security, specifically what type of data encryption does Atempo support in flight?
So in flight, between our data movers, like I said, we can take and use a key that you provided us, or we'll use SSL TLS version 1.3 for handshaking between the two data movers, or the data movers in a Miria server to encrypt the data and protect it.
Okay, nice. And then I'm afraid we're running out of time here in our live Q&A, but if folks want to get started with Mira, what's the best course of action?
Right off the bat, go straight to www.atempo.com or hit up one of our partners, Applied Data Systems. Got a lot of great information from both.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much for being on the event today, Mike.
All right. Thank you.